Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. Welcome, everybody, to PBJAMZ.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it is that you are joining us for this episode of PBJAMZ. I am thrilled to be able to introduce to you Moira Donohue, who is the author of a few books, and actually she's going to be coming back to PBJAMZ, so I'm excited. This will be her first time, but not her last. So today we're going to be talking about her picture book biography called "STOMPIN at the SAVOY." So welcome, Moira.
Thank you so much for having me. It is really just so wonderful to talk to somebody who loves children's literature and loves music and loves to see them combined. So it's really a thrill for me to be talking to you, Tanya.
Yeah, bringing those things together is
Yep.
absolutely the passion that started PB Jams. And I have to say, when I was reading over your book again last night, I knew the name Chick Webb, like I knew that name, and I love jazz. But I did not know his story, and it is fascinating. So talk to us about how you got the idea for this book and for writing about him and this event at the Savoy.
Yeah, so I've always loved big band music. It wasn't my era, but I loved it anyway. And I listened to it. I knew a fair amount about it, knew all of the big players, or so I thought. And I was watching the Ken Burns special about jazz, and he's mentioning Bunny Barrigan and Duke Ellington, and I'm like, yeah. And then he mentions Chick Webb. And unlike you, I just went, who? Who? A name I don't know? Well, I didn't like the fact that I didn't know. So that after the special was over, I went to look him up because I was annoyed that there was somebody that I didn't know. And when I did, and I read what little there was about his story, I was just
Yeah.
captivated by him. And I thought I'm gonna have to turn this into a book. I have to. I don't know if I can sell it, but I just have to do it. It was one of those things. I just loved his story so much. And I thought I'm going to focus it not so much on like his life, but on this one big battle of the bands. And you can see on my screen, I've got it up there. That's an actual poster that was produced for them, and that is a picture of the Savoy that night when they had the competition. I think it looks like there's a number of policemen there because of the enormous crowds that ended up coming. So that's actually how I got the idea, and then I had to do all the research, which we'll discuss in a minute because that's a story and a half.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. So oftentimes I find that's a great place to get ideas, just watching other like documentaries or, checking the news or, even Twitter feeds and, social media. A couple of my book ideas have come from those, yeah, real life events that you just didn't know about until you just happened to see a little clip. So that's fantastic. That's a
Yeah.
great tip for all of you who are looking for ideas and wanting to write. Just check out those documentaries and social media for those real life things that have happened.
Yeah.
So when you got this idea, I want to talk about the music, and I think that's probably inherent in how the journey of this book happened. So share with us whatever you want us to know about the journey and the musical connections of this book.
Yeah, so now let's see. What if I can make this go forward. Yeah, there we go. So I particularly connected with Chick Webb for a number of reasons. And one of them was that he's from Baltimore, and my son has lived in Baltimore for many years and loves the city. So of course I was, my little, what do you call them? Spidey tingles are like, oh, Baltimore, Baltimore. And was a drummer, which my daughter is a percussionist. It's not how she makes her living, but she spent many, many, many years making lots and lots and lots of noise in our basement on many, many, many percussion instruments. Of course, I learned about percussion along with her, because that's
Yeah.
kind of what happens. So I was drawn to it for that reason as well. And Chick Webb, because of his a medical condition, never got taller than 4 feet 1 inch. Now, I'm not that short and I didn't have his challenges, but I am short and I know what it's like when you're short in a tall world.
Yeah.
So I was kind of, felt a certain kindred there,
Yeah.
kindred spirit there. And I am competitive. I am really competitive. Nobody likes to play games with me because I like to win. But so when I saw that there was a battle of the bands, and I could tell just from what I read that Chick Webb was competitive too. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is the man I need to write about. And so I did. So I listened to a lot of his music. I listened to his band perform it. And I also listened to Benny Goodman's band perform the same songs.
Right.
And I could hear an incredible difference.
Mm.
Between the two, and that kind of spurred me on more because I was like, I really, really want to write about somebody who was this incredibly talented. So I think that's kind of the musical connection, well, and other connections that I made to Chick Webb. Um, does that
Yeah.
answer? Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want us to know then about the actual writing or the journey of the book? Is there anything
Oh,
about
yeah.
that?
I want to talk about the research. I've
Okay.
written mostly nonfiction, and nonfiction is a lot of research, a lot of research. And there are so many things available now that weren't available when I first started writing, which is both a wonderful thing and a terrifying thing, because you can find wonderful things online that are amazing. You can actually listen to recordings like of Chick Webb. You can listen to recordings of people speaking that weren't available before. But you can also find lots of information that isn't right, that hasn't been fully vetted. It's not maliciously wrong, but it's wrong.
Right.
And even with everything that's out there, you have trouble. So I do want to talk about the research that went into this book. The first thing was having watched this Ken Burns special. I did a lot of looking to see if there was anything that had been done about Chick Webb specifically. And I found that someone had done a documentary about him. Um, but I couldn't find the documentary anywhere. I could not access it. And now this is a few years ago. I have lots of librarian friends. If you write nonfiction, you have librarian friends. One of my librarian friends worked at the Library of Congress. So I said, there is this documentary. I can't find it. I don't know what to do. And luckily, she not only worked at the Library of Congress, she worked in film preservation. So
Oh,
she set me up, and this is the Library of Congress right here. And she set me up. I had to go downtown. I lived in the DC area at the time, to the Library of Congress
hmm.
and I was booked an appointment to actually watch this documentary. And I sat there and took notes, and it was great because there was a lot of wonderful information. Um, I will tell you that this right here is the CD of that same documentary that came out. Oh my gosh, within a couple of months of having sold the book,
Oh,
um,
wow.
which would have made life a lot easier, but it's okay. I have it now and I can
Yeah.
watch it anytime I want. So that was just one challenge about the research.
Hmm.
Another challenge was when they were illustrating it, and Tani, you may know this, when they illustrate nonfiction, the illustrator has to do a lot of research as well. So the illustrator had drawn Chick falling down the stairs, which is a very key moment in the story because
Right.
he got very injured, and that's why he turned to drums to help build up upper body strength. And so she had drawn it as if he were coming down an inside staircase in an apartment building.
Ah.
And the editor was like, I wonder if that's right. Do you know if that's right, Maura? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm thinking because he was in Baltimore and Baltimore is known for these row houses, that's probably not right. So
Mm.
she said, well, you need to find out. So I spent literally an entire day, morning to night, trying to find out where Chick Webb lived, which I did find out, and what his house looked like, which I couldn't find out because it had been torn down and rebuilt. Um, and so the next morning I was just in despair. I did not want to have to go. Remember, I'm competitive. Did not want to have to go back to the editor and say I couldn't find it. So I said,
Right.
okay, okay. Now this was during COVID. So I called up a librarian, a friend of mine who worked at Howard University, and I said, I have this problem. Can you help me? And she said, well, it's COVID. I'm not in the office or have limited access. She said, but I have a librarian friend who works at the Enoch Pratt Library, which is in Baltimore. And that's this library right here.
Oh,
And she said, and they focus on a lot of Baltimore history. So I reached out to him and I told him my dilemma and how I needed to know what Chick Webb's house looked like. And now remember, I spent an entire day trying to find this. Within 15 minutes, he sent me this article, which I could not access. And you will see this is a picture of the
uh,
staircase in front of his house. And
how
she
awesome.
did draw illustrate it very much like that in
Yeah.
the book. So thank heavens for librarians. But then there was a third challenge with this. And as I say, when you write a lot of nonfiction, there are always challenges. But the third challenge was one that came up with my agent. I had written that he died in 1939. And my agent came back to me and she said, I'm not sure that's right. And I said, well, here's a picture of the headstone at his grave in Baltimore that his wife put on there. And it says clearly 1939.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, well, it's not the date that he died. The problem is the date he was born. And you wrote down 1909. I said, yeah, well, there it is, 1909. And she said, well, I've read some things that say 1905 and some that say 1907. And it's true that birth records back then, they had, church records, they had city hall records, and things were
Right.
not always clear. Things were not always the same. They didn't always match up. She said, so I think you need to, clarify this. Well, I did more and more research, although one would have thought this would have been enough. I did tons of research, and finally I found so many sources for three different dates that I just said, I don't feel confident about any of them anymore, even though it says that on his gravestone. So what we decided to do before we sent it out to publishers was to put it in an author's note and say, we're not sure. It's one of three dates, and it still puts him at dying in his 30s, which was very young, and which is why he didn't make very many recordings, why he didn't, you don't hear that much about him because all the music he could have made, beyond his very untimely death, of course, he never made. So anyway, research, which I love and fear, because it keeps me awake at night, like, oh my gosh, did I get that right? Did I make a mistake? Was quite a challenge for this book, but I think ultimately we got it right. We got it right. So and when we couldn't, we explained that we couldn't. So I did want to share that, even though it's not part of the music aspect of it. It is certainly part of the nonfiction writing part.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
So I will let you take it from there. Ask me what else.
okay. Well, so we've talked about a little bit about the musical connections, and there's tons more. I mean, guys, if you like go and read this book because the stories are just fascinating and how this battle. So that is one of the huge music connections in my mind in this book. So what can you share a little bit about that battle and how that maybe came to be, or whatever you found the most interesting about that.
Well, yeah, I think the fact that these big band battles were a big deal back then, I found that just fascinating. I mean, people didn't have all the access to music and concerts and television and so forth. So these were really a big deal. And I found that very interesting. And I listened to the final song, which was Stompin' at the Savoy, that both bands played, and I listened to both recordings of both, and it really was clear to me that Chick Webb's recording was just jazzier, swingier, brighter, just jumped more. And I found it fascinating too that Gene Krupa, who was really famous drummer for Benny Goodman, just said that that's it. He just bowed because he could not
Yeah.
could not beat Chick at when it was comes to playing drums. Um, and I don't know what I don't know, Tanya, how you advise people about presenting things, but because my daughter's a percussionist, I did ask her to help me with some aspects of the book. Did you want me to address that or?
Sure, if you'd like to, whatever you think would be interesting, we're down for that.
Okay, well, one of the things was when you write about music, you have to incorporate sound. And so I wanted to use a lot of onomatopoeia to really capture the sound. But I had to have it right. And so my daughter was visiting me and I said, well, you need to help me get the sounds right for some of the things I'm describing. And how does it sound? You know, what words would sound like the sounds of him doing this? So she had, of course, her drumsticks and she tapped them on like a railing and tinkety tink was pretty clear. But when we got to the marble, we talked about him doing it on the steps, and we just sat there. I had a marble step in the place I was living at the time, and over and over and over until we could come up with some words
Mhm.
that sounded like the sound she was making on the marble steps. And I think we came up with thwackety thwack. But that is one of the challenges of writing music. Um, you can't really write about it and leave out the sounds, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it, thwappity that thwap. And that's what we decided it sounded like. She also taught me, because I said, you know, teach me something. And she said, well, I'll teach you a paradiddle, which of course
Yeah.
caught my eye because a paradiddle is not only a term in percussion as a rudiment, it is also a term for tap dancing, which we will talk about at another time. But I know how to do paradiddles in tap dancing, but I didn't know how to do them in drumming. So she taught me how to do it. And when I do school presentations, I sort of teach kids and sort of challenge kids to try and do it as well. So if we have a moment, I'm going to put this down so you can see my hands better.
Okay.
Okay. And here you go. This is a paradiddle and it goes right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, which is not that hard. Right, left, right, left, right, left, left. But when you keep doing it and try and speed it up, so right there, I just lost it. But I challenge people to try and do that if you're not a drummer. My daughter can do it at lightning speed, but for me, you saw I didn't get very far.
Right.
But,
Right.
uh, but I think it's kind of fun to just, and you think, oh my gosh, if you can't even do that, how could he do what he did?
Yeah.
I can't even comprehend. Um, yeah, I think I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to tell you particularly about the music or well, I am originally from New York City, so the fact that this happened, you know, up on Lenox Avenue in Harlem was just fascinating to me. And the fact that there were like 4,000 people in the ballroom and 5,000 people outside just waiting to hear the results. And that is in watching the documentary that was done, Norma Lewis, I think her name is. She was one of the big dancers. Did Lindy Hop Norma Miller, excuse me, did Lindy Hop dancing, and she was there that night and saw all the crowds and was out there on the dance floor dancing. She used to dance with Frankie Manning, and she's her experiences on that recording about on the documentary, and it's just fascinating to hear her observations and the fact that she was actually there. And she said it was just it was like no other night that night. So I found that very interesting too.
Yeah, the energy level must have been absolutely off the charts for that.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so just a quick side question. So the paradiddle in tap dancing, is that rhythm the same as the paradiddle in percussionism?
It's not. It's not.
Okay.
In tap dancing, it's just one, two, three, four. It's just and it's just it's all done with one foot. There's no
Okay.
the first, the four beats, 1, 2, 3, 4 is all on one foot, and then you switch feet, as opposed to the I mean, I guess that's 1, 2, 3, 4 also, but has a little bit different sound because you're switching hands. And
Right.
in tap, the entire paradiddle is on one foot,
The
and
same
then you
foot.
move to the other foot.
Interesting. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting.
And of course it has a fun name, right? Paradiddle. Who doesn't
It
want to
is
say
a
that?
fun name. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Kids love those fun names in the books and playing around with them with their tongues and all that. So that'll be super fun. So when you think about people using this book, whether it's kids reading or teachers sharing it, or just adults reading it with their kids at home, what is one thing that you hope, sometimes when we read books, things just we kind of gloss over. We may not pay attention. What is one thing that you really hope they don't gloss over? What is one thing you really hope they share or pay attention to in the book?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And oh, there you have it. My one takeaway. And it's interesting because when I sent it to my agent is not a musical person.
Okay.
And she said, but you know what? She said, this book isn't at its core about music. At its core, it's about overcoming things and never giving up and persisting and not letting anything stop you. So and I said, she said, it's a book of inspiration and hope. And I said, yeah, actually, it really is. The music is
The
a
vehicle. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it is. So this is two lines from the book that I hope people won't miss. But it says, but mute being small didn't stop him from making a giant sound. He just needed a taller chair and a higher bass pedal to do it. And I find that, I mean, that came from my heart too, because it's like, he didn't give up, and he just did what he needed to do to accomplish what he was absolutely set on accomplishing. And I think of everything, and I did say, I said, Baltimore and the drumming and all that, but I think of everything. What drew me to the story the most was just that persistence. So that is the one takeaway I hope everybody gets from the story.
It's so interesting to think like, so this is what he's known for. This is what he worked his whole entire life. Although it was a short life, this is what he worked, toward. But then to think that he never would have probably even picked up drumsticks had it not been for this accident and this diagnosis. And I think,
Right.
for people who have any sort of different ability or disability, however they, prefer to refer to it, like sometimes those hardest challenges bring the greatest blessings that we have, right?
Right. That's right. It's really true. It's
Yeah.
really true. And it's interesting. You and I had chatted about when we started writing, and we started writing about the same time. And I was so confident in my writing, and that when I was in middle school, I wrote an entire book and sent it into Scholastic, who said, "Oh, thank you very much." But you know, so I was very pleased when I did finally publish a book with Scholastic.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that was
But
a full circle moment.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Not, that whole idea of not giving up. I mean, I do think a lot of writers become writers because they keep doing it, you know,
I think it's the
and
only way that you become a writer, really. I mean, maybe every now and then somebody, I mean, just like with acting or musicians or whatever, sometimes you get lucky off the first, little bit, but most of us that doesn't happen. Most of us really do have to keep at it for a long time.
right. And those people who give up don't get published. And,
Exactly.
and I I come from a family where writing comes very naturally to
Mhm.
them. And for me, although I liked to write, it didn't come that naturally. I really had to work at it. And I think the fact that I had to work at it, kind of spurred me on. It was that challenge, that competitiveness of like, oh, well, they can just spit this out and it's great. Well, I can do it too. It's just gonna
right?
take me a little longer and a few more drafts,
Yep,
but
you just need
you
a
know.
taller chair and a higher bass pedal, but you'll get there.
Exactly, exactly. Oh, thank you for bringing that around so nicely.
Absolutely. Yes, totally.
Oh
It's
gosh.
very, very apropos. I mean, I'm a short girl too, so I'm only 5'2", and I have to have and I live in a house with 11-foot ceilings in most of it. It's an old Victorian farmhouse.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
I have to have a step stool for almost everything I do in my
Oh
house.
yeah.
Almost everything. So
Oh yeah.
again, like you said, not quite as short as Chick Webb, but I can definitely relate to some of those challenges that he faced in being a vertically challenged
Yeah.
person,
Yep.
because I'm
Yep.
there
Yep.
too. Yeah. So,
Yep.
oh, this is so good. So fabulous. This book I really, really enjoyed. And I'm so excited to dig in. You guys know that I'm gonna link up a whole bunch of stuff below. So there's gonna be a YouTube playlist with some of this amazing music that Maura and I have been talking about, and some Chick Webb recordings, and all those things are going to be in the YouTube playlist, as well as some things that music teachers can use in their classrooms. So that YouTube playlist is going to be full of a bunch of fun things. There's going to be a Pinterest board with tons of ideas of how you can, build on this book and take away from it, and then, extend it and expand it to do other things with your classes, or in your home with your kids, or in your daycare, wherever you're choosing to use this book. So all that's going to be below. And I've gotten so excited about digging into that music and listening, and getting to be able to pull that stuff together. It's one of the great joys of PB for me. I was talking with Julia Hammond the last episode, and I was saying, as my book gets closer, which it comes out next year, and it's like, gosh, I just don't know if I can swing PB and my launch and all this. And I'm like, I couldn't stop doing this any more than I could stop breathing at this point, because I just love not only getting to know these amazing books that I might not would have, noticed, but also getting to meet all of you wonderful authors, and just making friends with so many new people that I probably wouldn't have had a chance to interact with, and the things that we share, just all of it. And then digging into the curriculum of it and the fun things, so you guys check out all that stuff below. We're going to keep going with this conversation in just a minute, but before I forget, I just want to remind you and encourage you, whenever you read a great book that you love, to please take a minute and do a review. Or if you see a book that you love that's not in your library, either your school library, your kids' school library, or your local public library, just do a little request, find out how they do it. Mine is still a little in the dark ages, so we have to do pen and paper, but most libraries, I think, these days have like a little form that you fill out online. So just, say, hey, you should think about adding this to your collection, those reviews, and just sharing by word of mouth. This book is fabulous for music teachers, but also for people who love big band music and jazz music. So, and for any kid that loves music, your little guys and girls who love tapping on stuff everywhere they go, like, this book is so perfect for them. So, just share this book with them. Say, hey, I read a book that you would really enjoy. You should check this out. So those are some ways you can support not only our PBJAMZ authors, but all the authors that you read and enjoy. So make sure you do that. Give them shout outs on social media as well. Anything you would add, Maura, to that conversation?
Oh, no, that's great. I was going to talk a little bit, if we have time, if you want to, just about the writing life and how you get to that point as well. If you want to talk
Sure,
about that a little bit.
sure.
I was
Let's
just going to
begin.
share my journey, but absolutely, social media and giving a review on Amazon makes an enormous difference. It really does.
Big.
But I was going to talk just a little bit about writing and how everybody comes to it from a different place. And Tanya and I shared that we started as kids, but then I don't know your story, but I know for me, you go into high school, you don't really, you're writing essays, you go into college, you're writing term papers. I went on to law school, I'm writing briefs, and all of that I'm writing, but it's not the same. And I actually was I focused my attention on writing legislation, which actually is a more creative thing than you would think because it's you're starting with nothing and you're kind of creating stuff, new laws, and so it actually has a kind of a creative side to it, which I guess is what drew me to it. But after doing that for 20 years, I decided I needed to spend a bit more time with my kids, and I took some steps back and then I went back to what I really liked, which is writing for children because I love children's literature. And as we both discussed too, I love the children's writers community. It's just the best group of people there. I've been around adult writers, and adult writers are not quite as open and sharing as children's writers are. Um, but um, it takes a lot of perseverance. And when I started writing, I published a few plays and poems and magazine articles, but it took a good 5 years before I sold my first children's book manuscript, which was Alfie the Apostrophe. And I followed it with Penny and the Punctuation Bee. Both of those are fiction because punctuation marks don't actually tap dance,
Right.
well, except in my mind. And then I just went from there to writing nonfiction. And that was like it for me. I just really love nonfiction. And so I just kept going from there. But it took a long, long time, and you have to just keep doing it and keep sending it. And I had a kid ask me at a school visit one time, he said, "How many rejections have you gotten?" And I said, "Well, I sat down and counted in anticipation of that question. But when I got to 250, I got tired of counting." So it takes a lot of time, a lot of rejecting. But throughout all of it, you refine, you learn, you know better what you can and can't write. Where, I don't know about you, Tanya, but I have an inner child who is in third grade. That's my sweet spot. That's kind of where I write to.
Right.
It just takes a while to really even think about getting there. It is also it's a solitary life, which is why we have organizations where we get together and we share things with each other. And so you had mentioned sharing writer tips, and I thought I would, in fact, share a few of them with you. I already shared one that said if you're writing about music, you have to add sound. You must add sound. I do have a book about tap dance, and what I did with that was I actually added some little verses that are in a soft shoe rhythm because you have to have rhythm if you're writing about tap dance. It's just so for tap dance, you got to write with rhythm, and for music, you got to write with some sounds. But those are specific to music books. In my three general writer tips that I would like to share are the first is what I call my verb run. And I, I after I've got a manuscript that's pretty much done, I just do what I call the verb run. And I go through it line by line looking for only one thing, and that is verbs. It is amazing what good verbs can do to make your writing sparkle. And it is amazing how often you don't use good verbs until you force yourself to go back and look at them. And you say, he walked down the street. Walked down the street? Well, no, that doesn't tell you anything. He raced down the street. He ambled down the street. He strolled down the street. I don't know. There's so many wonderful verbs. So I go back and I would say I change 50% of the verbs in my writing, at least, to give it some sparkle. And just even looking at my own writing here, there's ah, I should have marked it, but if you read it carefully, you'll see places where there are really nice verbs that just add a lot of sparkle. I say he hammered rhythms and he banged rhythms and things like that, scratched out rhythms. All those just give so much more interest to a book, and that's true for any child's book. It's true for adult books too. So I always do a verb run where I'm only looking for verbs, and I do that towards the end, and I am always amazed, as aware as I think I am of verbs. I'm amazed at how unaware I really am. And then another tip I have is wow facts, and that's primarily for nonfiction, but it applies to fiction too. Like if you have a moment, whether it's a fact or an event or anything that makes you go, wow, it will probably make your reader go, wow, as well. So anything, it's like it's really good to find those, put them in, and give them their full beat. You know, I have a writer friend who always says she'll read something, she'll say, "Oh, this needs another beat." And I finally understood what she meant. She meant it just needs another word or two to stretch it out just a little bit more so that you're giving full reign to that particular wow fact or wow moment. And then, this is it's kind of cliched to say write with heart, but it's also it's important because it comes up in two ways. You have to write from your heart, meaning the stories that are truly something that touches you. So as I had said, when I learned about uh Chick Webb's story, I was it just I was compelled to write it. And I was describing it to a writer friend of mine. She said, "You have to keep going with the story because it is so clear that it is so exciting to you that you love it so much. Your heart is in it. You have to do it." So you have to write those things that make you love them, you know? And so that's part of writing from heart, but it's also putting heart into your stories, not being afraid to put in a touching moment, a sad moment, something that makes you feel good or bad, or just makes you feel something in your heart. You have to put that into your writing as well. So it's kind of got two sides to it, and it is sort of cliched, but it's also sort of true. So anyway, that's sort of my writer journey. I've written a lot about I write a lot about I write biographies and a lot about animals because I really love animals. As much as I love music, I also really love animals. And I've gone on several safaris and kissed giraffes and chased gorillas, and I love animals. So I do that's something I write about that also comes from my heart. I don't know. Is this helpful? Or am I just
Yeah.
rambling
Yeah.
on here? I don't
No,
know.
I think those are great. I do think those are great. So thank you for sharing those. Um, so as we wrap things up more, let's talk about what else is coming. Obviously, you have another visitor to coming to PBJAMZ. You have other books out and already available, but then also, do you have anything coming up that you want us to know about? What do you want us to know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So this is, Stomping at the Savoy. This is the one we've talked about today. This one got a Florida silver medal. And coming up with you in June, we'll be doing Tapping Feet, which is from Raycraft, and got a bronze medal from the Florida Book Award people. And I have two books come out this year that I wanted to talk about briefly. One is called Blues Music. And it was fascinating because shine on that. Because I picked that because I didn't know that much about the blues, but I was kind of drawn to it. And then I kind of figured out why. I realized I love harmonica. I love the harmonica. I didn't realize I loved the harmonica, but
Yeah.
I do. And so that was really an interesting book to write because I learned and just was exposed to a wonderful form of music. And then my most recent book that came out, it has nothing to do with music, but I'm going to show it anyway because I'm really proud of it. And it's called 5 Minute Dinosaur Stories from National Geographic. I really loved it because it was really a challenge to write stories about dinosaurs. And when we talked about it, I said, you do know that nobody lived during the time of dinosaurs. So there's nobody who wrote anything down about, but I was able to research things to find out what dinosaurs ate which dinosaurs and which ones lived in the same place at the same time and chased each other and how they chased each other and how they hunted each other. And so it was a challenge, but it was really, really fun. I have another book coming out sometime in the fall next fall, about immigration. Again, not related to music, although there are certainly musical references. It's about European immigration. And oh, I have a book. Whoops. I have a book that I don't know if you can see it on this screen. Yeah, I have a book, a manuscript that my agent wanted me to make a few changes to, and then she'll send it out. I don't want to mention it because we don't know yet if it will sell. But that's a picture of the person that it's about. And it is about someone who's very musical in many, many ways. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that I can tweak it enough that she'll be able to sell it. So fingers crossed that we're talking about that someday, because that is another person very, very dear to my heart. So hopefully that will come through as well. So that's me bragging about me, because I like to talk about me, and this is me where you can find me. And I do love to get email. So you can reach me through my website. It has my email address and everything. And I am not on Facebook. And if you think you found me on Facebook, you have found a cloned account. I had to give it up. I had to try and close it. I haven't successfully done so. So people that leave messages for me on Facebook, I don't get them. And I can't seem to get it to work. So better to get to me through Instagram or just email me. So, and that's me with a really nicely touched up photo. So I like to share it because it makes me look younger than I am.
Well, it's beautiful, and you're beautiful, and your books are beautiful. And guys, I got to tell you, so I was excited about Stomping at the Savoy, but like I said, I didn't really know that story. I do know a little bit about the story that's coming up in June. So do please make sure you come back for that chat. That's Tapping Feet.
Yes, I will do a little tap dance for you.
Love it. For one thing, it comes out through Raycraft, which is the publisher who's publishing my debut book. But also, like, I just love this. I love this topic coming up. So, and then like Maura said, we're going to talk again later about blues music. So we have a few more visits to come. But you guys, I will link all of her information up below. And she is kindly offering to give away one copy of Stompin' at the Savoy to a lucky winner. So all you have to do is to comment here on the blog. If you're watching this on YouTube, because it'll be posted there as well independently, but make sure you follow the link back to the blog. And if you comment on it on the time frame that it lists there, then you will be eligible and entered to win your very own copy of Stompin' at the Savoy. So beautiful book, so many great tips. It's always interesting to me more. I always talk about the little things that bubble to the surface. You know, I always come to my guests with questions that I want to talk about, but then there always are these other little things that bubble up. And I love what you said earlier about, you know, thank heaven for librarians. And I always love to give shout outs to our librarians, school librarians and public librarians, and any other kind of librarians that are out there, because you really do help us and make our job
Oh my God, yes.
much easier. Yeah, much easier. And then I love too what you said about, you know, if you're writing about music, you have to include sound. And if you're writing about dance, you have to include rhythm. I think those are two excellent tips for our writing friends. And just the joy of being in the Kidlit community, being writers in this community. So love to point out those little pieces. So thank you so much. It's been such a nice conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy talking to you, and I really do appreciate the chance to just share some thoughts and such with your followers. So thank you very much.
It's been very worthwhile for my writing friends and my teaching friends, and all the other friends that are joining, teaching friends, all of you. I hope you got something great out of this episode, and I hope you will join us next time for PBJAMZ. Till then,
Thank you.
Toodles.
Bye.
Yummy books and music, PB Jams. Reading, writing, teaching, PB Jams. What a yummy treat, jamming PBs all the time, PB Jams. books and bookish songs, tips for music teachers, interviews and book reviews, a little singing